You're listening to the WBT Podcast with Michael Lodge. Listen to all of our podcasts at www.wbtpod.com. Stay informed. Let's get started.
And welcome to the WBT. This is Michael Lodge. I'm glad you've joined me. Today our conversation is going to be about Martin Luther King, and we're going to go over some of his wise words. I'll be right back.
This is brought to you by Lodge & Co., a business and tax advisory firm where your success is our goal. Call us today toll-free at 888-681-1518 or visit us at www.lodge-co.com and learn more about what we can do for you. Lodge & Co., your source for sound business and tax services.
Well, it's a wonderful day here in Palm Beach, Florida. Today's Martin Luther King, and it's one of those days that some celebrate and some do not. When I had my offices in Los Angeles, I don't think we ever really shut down the office for MLK Day. All of the government offices shut down. And it was kind of one of those days that we could get caught up because we didn't have to deal with any government offices in the tax business that I was in. But I think we made a mistake, and I think that we should have probably shut down, because if you go back and read the statements that Martin Luther King has made, they apply so much today. And I was reading some this morning as I was preparing for this podcast, and one really stuck out to me. And it was about education and where we were headed towards education, because what he said and what he predicted is exactly where our universities and colleges are, and also our grade schools and middle schools and high schools are at this moment. Because we're in trouble on the political philosophies that are being taught in our schools. And he said, and it was in a sermon, or not in a sermon, it was in a publication that he had written for. It's called The Purpose of Education. And it was put in the Morehouse College student newspaper in 1947. Now think about where we are now. We're 2020, and his words are now in effect and has happened throughout our education. So the statement was this: if we are not careful, our colleges will produce a group of closed-minded, unscientific, illogical propagandists consumed with immoral acts. Be careful, brethren, be careful, teachers. He warned us, and we didn't listen. Today in our public school systems, we have so much stuff going wrong. We have political agendas that are being pushed through by teachers, and they're doing great damage of individual thinking of our students. So now whatever is said in the classroom or on campus, excuse me, there's something wrong with my voice. Whatever is being said in the classroom or on campus is now just being repeated without any thought, without any independent thinking, without even researching what was said to make sure if it was true or not. I'm going to read it again because it's so powerful. It's such a powerful statement that it says, if we are not careful, our colleges will produce a group of closed-minded, unscientific, illogical propagandists consumed with immoral acts. Be careful, brethren. Be careful, teachers. We should have listened to him. There's a lot of things when we think back, and we said, if we just listened and if we would have focused more on what is being taught in our schools, we would not be in the situation where we are at now, where socialism is thought of as not being socialist. not being government controlled, because they think now that socialism is something new, something brand new, something spick and span that's being told to everybody. But it's not. Socialism is socialism. It is slavery. It is that government taking controls of the lives and the independent thinking of Americans. That's what socialism is all about, because they feel that government is the answer to everything. And in our view, government is the answer to nothing. No one should take away our rights of being able to make the choices that we want to make as individuals and as Americans. If we are not careful, our colleges will produce a group of closed-minded, unscientific, illogical propagandists consumed with immoral acts. Be careful, brethren, be careful, teachers. And we didn't listen. We did not listen. Our education system is in shambles at the moment on political thought and freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of thought. It has to go one way and no other way. That's how our students are being taught on campus today. If you are a Republican or an independent or a conservative or a middle-of-the-road person, you are no longer acceptable to that campus, because they have gone far left. And that is the problem of our school system today. I remember in the last election in 2016, I was sitting down at the dinner table with my goddaughter, and we were talking about Trump and we were talking about Hillary Clinton. And her teacher told them, these young students, Hillary Clinton is the answer. That's the direction that America needs to go. And I was shocked that at that age, being in middle school, and the teacher indoctrinating them on who to vote for and why. No debate was given to the students to make up their own decision. It was told to them directly from the teacher in a middle school. And it goes up to the high school and goes up to the college and it goes up to the university level. Gosh, if only we would have listened just a little bit more. One of the quotes that I've always liked, and he said it from the Birmingham jail of April 16, 1963. Now, I'm going to age myself because I was alive at that time. I was at home with my mom. And I remember watching Martin Luther King march peacefully through the cities of the southern part of our nation, who is greatly influenced by democratic racism. The Democrats at that time were just really anti-giving the black individual the right to vote or the right to even be an individual. It was a situation where there was really a lot of injustice going on. But I remember watching Martin Luther King on a little black and white television. Sometimes you had to hit it on the side to get the lines from going, to get the lines to go away. I remember my dad giving that little television set a whack on the side, and yep, the lines went away. That's when we had big old tubes in the back of the TV. And we only had at that time, we had ABC, NBC, and CBS. So those were the only three that we had. And then finally, PBS came along, and we were able to watch Sesame Street and Big Bird and all that. All in black and white. But those were the days when we were really watching what was going on. So he made a statement from the Birmingham jail on April 16, 1963. And it said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inexplicable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all directly. So as we spend our day, some of you may be working, some of you may be off. I'm really losing my voice this morning for some reason. I don't know why. But if we're sitting around, pull up a book or pull up on Google some of MLK's quotes. They are ones that you will always remember. Write them down. Put them in your journal so you can refer back to them when you need to. When you need to have that little spirit inside you to talk about racism, to talk about inequality. Those discussions are still had. The problem with today is that racism has become a political attack instead of a real discussion on racism. Anytime that the other person doesn't believe in what you're saying or you don't agree with them, they immediately call you a racist because it's used as a political attack. So it's done a lot of damage to the discussion of racism because is it political racism or is it real racism that we're discussing? And unfortunately, today it's all about political racism, which isn't even racism at all. This political thought process has been taught in our schools that if a person does not agree with your political views, he becomes or she becomes a racist. And that is not what Martin Luther King meant. Ever in all of his life, in all of his words of wisdom, it never came out that way. But in today's political climate, that's what it has become. That's what it has become. But just remember this, is that there's still injustice out there. And the problem is that we now have a threat to our justice. And we see it by people in government, in the FBI, in the Department of Justice, in the CIA, and all these government agencies who played very dirty in the last few years politically. And the American people see no justice, no legal arm of the law coming down upon them, but they come down upon the people that should not even be involved. So we have political racism that isn't even a part of racism. And the problem that I see now is that if you read and listen to and watch what is being said by the Democratic Party, they push this race issue daily because they know that it is part of their talking points, but they do nothing about sitting down and talking about what real racism is. But they use it as a political ploy, and so many people have fell for that. Elizabeth Warren does it constantly, daily. If you read her tweets, daily, there's something about racism and injustice and inequality. Because that is their talking points to get you on their side, but they do nothing about it. See, the problem is that people love to hear about it and they feel inspired, but the problem, the biggest problem, is that these people talking about it do nothing about it. And they haven't done anything about it for years and years and years. But they keep mixing it into their political agenda, to their political talking points, until finally people fell for it. But I think now people are saying, I see what you're doing. This is all about politics. It's not about my needs and about the injustices that have been put on me, or the racist remarks that have been set on me and my family. This is all about politics, isn't it? And you're using me. You're using me in your politics. You're not doing anything about it, but you're using me to get votes. You're using my plight, my inequality, my wages to go out and get votes and to push your agenda, but you do nothing for me. So I think American people are beginning to see that actions speak louder than words, and so far the words have led to no action. And that's where we stand. That's where we stand today. Martin Luther King was a very wise man, and I'm very happy as I read his words. In his I Have a Dream speech that we all know so very well, he said, "Out of the mountain of despair, a stone of hope." So if you are in despair about what's happening in this political system of ours in America today, remember, Martin Luther King that said, "Out of a mountain of despair, a stone of hope." There is something there that we can grasp onto, and we can make changes. We can make changes. I've told this story before because it's very meaningful to me. Several years ago, I had Manny Pacquiao as a client. And the Nelson Mandela Foundation, with Zinzi Mandela, the daughter of Nelson, came to America and they contacted me. And they said, "Listen, can we sit down with Manny Pacquiao? Because we would really like to put on a 92nd birthday fight for her father." Because Nelson loved boxing. He was a boxer himself. I said, "Sure, we can do that. And I can even get you in contact with the promoter of Manny." And they said, "That's good. You do that. You work that side, and then we'll work the Mayweather side." Because they wanted to have a Pacquiao-Mayweather fight in South Africa in celebration of Nelson Mandela's birthday. So we began to work on it together, she and I. We all flew to my team and her team. They all flew to Las Vegas, where Floyd Mayweather has his operations. She went to sit down with him. I went to sit down with my side. In the evening, we would sit at this little tiny bar, and we would talk about the various issues that had come through her life. And we talked about when her father was put into prison. Before he was put into prison, it was a very violent time. Bombs were going off and people were being attacked and terrorist activities were going on. And when he was put in jail for many, many years, and finally the day came when he was released from jail from pressure from outside of South Africa. He was finally let out, and when he went to meet his daughter, and they sat down together, and she was all gung-ho. She was ready to start fighting again. Her fists were up in the air, and she was ready to go. She was ready to fight. Nelson Mandela sat her down and said, "Listen, Zinzi, we've got to have peace. We've got to approach this in a peaceful way." And that's what she did. That's what he did, And he became one of probably the best presidents of South Africa that ever was there. Up until the day that he passed away, he was still known as the elder statesman of the world because of his passion for a peaceful approach to getting things done. Martin Luther King had the same passion. He was very peaceful in his approach, in the discussion, and in the movement of racism in America, and also in the inequalities in America. He was very peaceful about his approach in his message to the American people. Nelson Mandela had the same approach. And I think that's where we've gotten out of tune with the approach of how we deal things politically in the United States. Instead of trying to drive people together and trying to get them to talk, negotiate, mediate, come to an agreement, instead they fight head to head. Hate has done so much damage to our nation. Hate is so evil, but yet we've let it take control over our politics. True, we are fighting two very different systems. One side says we want to be independent, we want to be free, we want less government. We want to protect our Constitution, we want our liberties. And the other side says we want to be a socialist nation, we want government control, we want health care that's under government control, we want higher taxes, and the list goes on. If I went on, then I'd become political. I don't want to become political on today. But we have these two groups coming together, and neither one of them is sitting down face to face and saying, okay, what is better for America? What is good for this nation? Because there's so much hate between both political sides. We are such a great nation. Martin Luther King blessed this nation with his time in our presence. He really blessed us. He gave us so much wisdom. And if we would have taken the time to listen to what he said, we might be further along in our civilized manner towards each other, and how we focus on what is good for America. I love the statement. Remember John F. Kennedy, he made that statement, and I repeat it in my mind almost every day. Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. And that's the question you should be asking yourself today on Martin Luther King. What can you do for this nation? What can you do for your communities? What can you do for your neighborhood? What can you do for your families? There needs to be a change in that method of thinking. Because we have gotten so used to thinking that government is the answer, but it's not the answer, it's the problem, and we need to get back to the situation where Americans take back their ability to make changes in their own states, their own communities, their own neighborhoods, and especially in their own family, because leadership is seen through the eyes of your children by how you react and how you participate in making changes to your communities. That's how they see leadership. And if you want good leaders in this nation, practice the Martin Luther King philosophy and practice the philosophy of getting involved. Getting involved. Getting involved. Everybody go out and have a great Martin Luther King Day. Sit down, take 5 minutes. If you're at work at lunchtime, take your cell phone out and bring up some quotes of Martin Luther King and really think about what he has said, what he has done, and then think, what can you do? What can you do for your nation? This is Mike Lodge. I'll talk with you soon.
Thank you for listening to the WBT with Michael Lodge. Join us again tomorrow as we explore more about business and taxes. Follow us on iHeartRadio and go to our podcast website at www.wbtpod.com and listen to all of our podcasts and read our blogs.
This podcast has been produced by Michael Lodge, fully focused on content.